Alright, Metal Gear Solid 2. The worst of the Metal Gear games, in my opinion. And I will be reviewing the Substance version. So, let's get started. Alright, as soon as you start the game, you get a really good looking introduction. The graphics look good, it's really well made, and it gets you really hyped up to play the game. And then that theme comes in, and the atmosphere is just so good. It makes you get real interested in the story, and you probably think it's going to be a really fun game. This game is being hyped up by PS2 fanboys because the PS2 did not have that many exclusives, and this was supposed to be one of the first good ones. The first part of the game is what's known as the Tanker Mission. It starts off with a pretty cool opening on George Washington Bridge. Your mission objectives kinda suck though. All that you're supposed to do is take a picture of Metal Gear. This game has all the cool details that Metal Gear Solid 1 had. Everything from Snake's SIGs to his camera. And luckily, most things function like they did in Metal Gear Solid 1, so if you played the last game, you should be able to pick this right up. Luckily, the Russians come to spice up your mission by boarding the ship and showing the crew absolutely no mercy whatsoever. Snake and Otacon discover that the Russians are being led by a man named Gulukovich. But don't worry, because Otacon's here to remind you that you only have to complete your boring photography mission. Yeah, thanks. Despite my complaints, the graphics still look really good, really detailed, and really dark. The gameplay has been changed a little bit, but it's still really solid. The gameplay now uses shadows. In the hallways, the graphics look really good, and when you use the shadow to sneak up on an enemy, and shooting them in the head with a tranquilizer dart is as satisfying as ever. The boss fight in this part of the game is really interesting and really surprising the way it begins. It doesn't quite live up to the first game, but for the first boss fight it's really intense, really creative, and just a heck of a lot of fun to play. And then an old friend shows up just to make things a lot more complicated. You're probably wondering who he is.
You'll know soon enough.
And so will you. Your old enemy from Metal Gear Solid 1 turns up. And he is Revolver Ocelot. And he's somehow still alive, something that he grafted Liquid's arm to his own arm. So Liquid isn't really dead.
Won't die. They say it's the mark of a good officer. End of a liar.
So he shows up with his Russian military to take back Metal Gear Ray, which was built to destroy Metal Gear Rex a long time ago. In the process, he destroys the tanker and gives Snake a heck of a time trying to escape. And that's where the tanker part of the game ends. Then you move on to the second part of the game in the plant.
What's going on? Snake! Snake!
There are a lot of things about the plant part of the game which make it not as good as the first part of the game. Alright, the plant is shaped like this map, and you can move around pretty freely. The first real problem is the plot. Like in so many other games, you have to rescue the president. Now this is a big problem because it's such a cliche plot. Then we have the controls. Now Metal Gear Solid 1 didn't have the best controls either, but I could forgive that because it's a PlayStation 1 game and people didn't really know how to make the controls yet. But by the time Metal Gear Solid 2 got around, the controls should have been a lot better than they were. The Colonel still tells you what to do, but he's not nearly as good as the old Colonel. Also, you find out that Solid Snake is apparently dead, which is just really annoying and a really bad way to change the character. So you're probably wondering who replaced Snake as the main character. Well, it's a guy named Raiden, who looks like he's about 10 years old and probably couldn't beat up anyone. But what experience does Raiden have? Well, to tell you the truth, he doesn't really have any real experience.
No, not really.
So this is who the government sent to rescue the president? So the main character doesn't have any idea what he's doing, and he's our only hope. Brilliant. Luckily, at least the boss fights are pretty good. Like the boss fight against Vamp has a really cool introduction, and makes Vamp seem really mysterious and really threatening. Now his name's not exactly creative. I mean, he's a vampire named Vamp, but he's still an interesting enemy, and later in the game you have a pretty good boss fight against him. And the next boss is actually really creative. Her name's Fortune, and she can't be shot. The bullets actually go around her. She wants to die, but she can't. She can't control it at all. She can't die. At the end of the game, you have a really epic boss fight where you have to take out like 20 Metal Gear. You even have like one of your main enemies do like the Matrix. The real final boss fight is against a new snake called Solid Snake. And it reaches its own really epic conclusion. This is when Raiden kinda became a ninja. Overall, despite all the complaints I have about this game, it's still actually a really good game. The ending is really satisfying, the gameplay is as good as ever, and the sword fighting is really fun. The ending, you know, with the theme beginning to play, it just ties everything together really well. It's really emotional. The story is complicated, but still better than 90% of stories out there. It's the worst of the Metal Gear games, but that doesn't make it a bad game at all.